The smell of dust and old roses filled Grandma's study when my father slammed the will on the mahogany table. "You're not my daughter." The words hung in the air like poison. Everyone froze. My Aunt Nora, my Uncle William, the estate lawyer, all staring at me with something between pity and disgust. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached inside and carved out everything vital. "What are you talking about?" My voice cracked. He pushed a paper across the table toward me. A DNA test. The letterhead official, the results damning. "You have no biological claim to this estate. No claim to the Lawson name. No claim to anything." I grabbed the paper with shaking hands. The number swam before my eyes. 0% probability of paternal relation. "Why would you do this, Dad?" He looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize, cold, sharp, calculating. Eyes that said only one thing, greed. "Because the truth matters, Mira." He practically spat my name. "And the truth is, you're not family." The relatives turned away, one by one. Aunt Nora muttered under her breath, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I always knew something was off about her." Uncle William nodded, his face stone. "The estate should stay with blood relatives." My father's smirk deepened as the lawyer, Mr. Pemberton, a man who'd known me since childhood, quietly folded the will and placed it back in his briefcase. "Until proof says otherwise," Pemberton said, his voice professionally neutral, "the estate passes to the next of kin." Henry Lawson. My father. The man who'd just disowned me in front of everyone who mattered. My grandmother's portrait watched from the wall above the fireplace. Her eyes seemed almost alive, following the betrayal unfolding in her favorite room. At that moment, looking at her painted face, I made a silent promise. If he wanted everything, I'd make sure he choked on it. "This isn't over," I whispered. My father laughed. "Oh, sweetheart. It's very much over." I packed my things in silence. Every creak of the staircase felt like goodbye. The grandfather clock in the hallway, the one Grandma wound every Sunday, ticked away the final moments of my life here. The family mansion, with its sprawling gardens and memories in every corner, was no longer mine. My childhood bedroom, where Grandma used to read me stories. Gone. The library, where she taught me about art and history. Taken. Everything I'd known, everything I'd loved, stripped away with a fake DNA test and a smirk. As I carried the last box down the stairs, something caught my eye. Grandma's key ring hung by the front door, a small brass holder she'd kept for 50 years. She was meticulous about her keys. Always 5 of them: front door, back door, garage, safety deposit box, and one mystery key she never explained. Now there were only 4. One was missing. At a diner 20 miles away, I sat in a cracked vinyl booth and opened my grandmother's old sewing kit, her last gift to me, given 2 weeks before she died. "Keep this safe," she'd whispered, pressing it into my hands. "You'll know when you need it." I thought she meant needles and thread. Sentimental value. I was wrong. Beneath the thimbles and spools, my fingers found an envelope. Yellowed paper, sealed with wax. My name is written in her elegant script. "For Mira, when truth is twisted." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a clue. A property document. Coordinates written in the margin: 34.0522 degrees north, 118.2437 degrees west. And a single sentence in her handwriting: "Only the rightful heir will know where to look." I pulled out my phone, entered the coordinates. A location appeared. Deep in the San Gabriel Mountains. My grandmother had left me a map. The coordinates led to a cottage I'd never seen. Hidden deep in the woods, overgrown with ivy, windows dark with decades of dust. The missing key fit perfectly. Inside smelled of pine and memories. Furniture covered in white sheets. Boxes stacked against every wall. Family archive, the labels read in Grandma's handwriting. I opened the first box with shaking hands. Documents. Hundreds of them. Property deeds, bank statements, letters, photographs. At the bottom, a leather-bound ledger. I opened it carefully. Page after page of her handwriting. Dates, names, transactions. And on the final page, written in red ink, only the rightful heir will know where the deed lies. The truth protects itself. My pulse quickened. This wasn't over. Not even close. My father thought he'd won. He'd forgotten one critical detail: Grandma was always 3 steps ahead. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mira, it's Oliver. My cousin. Voice low, urgent. Oliver, Don't dig into this. His words came fast, nervous. Your dad's watching. He has people tracking you. If he finds out you're investigating. Find out what? That I'm trying to prove I'm not a fraud? It's not about that. He paused. He's dangerous when money's involved. Please, just let it go. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. If Oliver was scared, that meant one thing: I was close to something worth stealing twice. My father had orchestrated this betrayal carefully. The DNA test, the timing right after Grandma's death, the way he'd turned the family against me. But scared people make mistakes. And I was going to find every single one. The next morning, I returned to the cottage with supplies. Coffee, flashlight, determination. In the third archive box, beneath decades of family Christmas cards, I found a photograph. My father, maybe 30 years old. Standing in a hospital hallway, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The baby wasn't me. Different hospital bracelets, different dates. I flipped it over. Written in faded ink, July 5th, the exchange. HL. The exchange? What exchange? My birth date was July 5th. The floor creaked behind me. I spun around. A shadow moved past the window. Large, male, deliberate. Someone was here. Someone had followed me. I grabbed the photograph, shoved it in my pocket, and looked for another exit. The back door, locked from outside. Footsteps on the porch. The doorknob turned. The door opened slowly. A man stepped inside, tall, broad shoulders, wearing sunglasses despite the dim light. I recognized him immediately. My father's driver, Bruno. The boss said you shouldn't be here. His voice was flat, professional. This is my grandmother's property. Not according to the will. He moved toward the boxes. You need to leave. Now. Or what? He didn't answer. Just reached for the box I'd been searching for. Instinct took over. I grabbed the leather ledger, the photograph, and Grandma's journal, anything I could carry, and ran. Through the back room, climbing out a window, branches tearing at my clothes. Behind me, Bruno shouted into his phone, "She took files." "Yes, sir. I'll handle it." I didn't stop running until I reached my car, half a mile down the mountain road. My hand shook as I started the engine. Now it was war. Safe in a motel room, I spread everything across the bed. Grandma's journal was filled with entries spanning 40 years. Family gossip, financial notes, observations. But the last 6 months, after her cancer diagnosis, the tone changed. Henry is pressuring me to update the will. He doesn't know I've already protected Mira. Found discrepancies in the trust documents. Signatures don't match. Henry's been forging papers. If he lies about Mira's parentage, the truth will live in the bloodline test. I've taken precautions. My breath caught. She'd known. Somehow, she'd anticipated this exact betrayal. And she'd left me the evidence. The hidden detail wasn't hidden at all. It was in plain sight, written in her handwriting, documented in her words. My father had built his case on lies. But Grandma had built hers on truth. The next day, I drove to St. Catherine's Hospital, where I was born 28 years ago. The records department smelled like antiseptic and old paper. I need my birth records, I told the clerk, a tired woman in her 50s. She typed on her computer, frowned. That file's been requested and removed. Removed? By whom? She glanced around, then leaned closer. I shouldn't tell you this, but someone filed a formal request last month. Claimed family emergency. Provided all the right documentation. Who? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Henry Lawson. My father. He'd stolen my birth records. Is there a backup? Anything digital? Everything older than 15 years was just converted to digital last year. But the physical files. She shook her head. If someone with authorization removes them, they're gone. I left the hospital, mind racing. He'd erased my paper trail. But why? Unless there was something in those records he couldn't risk me finding. If he wanted to play with DNA, I'd play too. I called my father from a burner phone. Dad, it's me. Silence. Then, coldly, what do you want? I want to make this right. The DNA test, maybe we can redo it. Together. Just to clear my name with the family. More silence. I could practically hear him calculating. Why would you want that? Because I miss you. I forced tears into my voice. Because I don't care about the estate. I just want my family back. The lie tasted bitter. Fine, he said finally. We'll use an independent lab. This week. Thank you, Dad. He hung up. I stared at the phone, then at the plastic bag beside me. Inside, hair samples I'd collected from his comb 3 months ago, before everything fell apart. He thought he was walking into vindication. He was walking into a trap. The lab was sterile, clinical, and cold. Perfect for what I was about to do. My father arrived in an expensive suit, confidence radiating from every gesture. Shall we? He gestured toward the testing room. The technician explained the procedure. Simple cheek swab. Results in 1 week. But I'd done my research. I called ahead, explained my situation to the lab director, and showed him Grandma's journal entries about forged documents. We'll test both samples you provide, he'd said. Your swab, and any comparative sample. When the technician stepped out briefly, I made the switch. My father's hair sample, the one I'd collected months ago, went into the envelope labeled Mira Lawson. My actual sample went into the comparison envelope. My father watched, smirking, thinking victory was moments away. This will settle everything, he said. Yes, I agreed. It will. The results would show the truth, he'd lied about the first test. His own DNA would destroy his own lie. 1 week later, Mr. Pemberton called an emergency family meeting. The same room. The same players. The same portrait of Grandma watching from above. My father sat at the head of the table, practically glowing with anticipated victory. Let's make this quick, he said. I have a meeting at 3. Pemberton opened the envelope slowly, read the contents, and his expression changed. According to the latest DNA analysis. He paused, looked at my father. Henry Lawson is not the biological father of Mira Lawson. Gasps filled the room. My father's jaw dropped. His face went from confident to confused to furious in seconds. That's impossible. The results are conclusive, Pemberton continued. Moreover, the testing facility has flagged concerns about the original DNA test you provided. They're recommending a formal investigation into potential sample tampering. Aunt Nora stared at my father. Henry, what did you do? Nothing. She faked this somehow. Actually, I said quietly, I didn't fake anything. You did. All eyes turned to me. No, Dad. This is justice. My father stood so violently his chair toppled backward. She switched the samples. She's lying. Then explain, Pemberton said calmly, why the lab found irregularities in the first test you submitted. Explain why Mira's birth records have been illegally removed from the hospital. Explain the timing of all this, right after your mother's death. My father's face went pale. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Pemberton closed his briefcase. Without clear proof of biological relation, your claim to the estate as next of kin is now in question. The law requires genetic confirmation, which you've failed to provide honestly. This is insane. What's insane, Aunt Nora said slowly, is that you'd lie about your own daughter's paternity for money. My father looked around the room. No allies. No support. His own lie had legally erased him from the bloodline. He stormed toward the door, then turned back to me. You'll regret this. But his eyes showed something new. Fear. That night, I returned to Grandma's cottage. The police had secured it after my report about Bruno's intrusion, but they'd given me access as a potential heir. I remembered her words in the ledger, only the rightful heir will know where the deed lies. The rightful heir. Not the legal heir. The rightful one. I searched for hours. Under floorboards, behind panels, inside furniture. Finally, beneath a loose stone near the fireplace, I found it. A small iron box, locked with the missing key from her key ring, the one I'd taken from the cottage on my first visit. Inside, wrapped in silk, the original property deed for the estate. Dated 40 years ago. 2 names written in elegant script, Eleanor Lawson and Mira Lawson. My grandmother. And me. Not a will. A deed. Legal ownership, established decades before my birth, updated with my name the week I was born. The will was secondary. The deed was absolute. My phone rang the next morning. Unknown number. Miss Lawson? This is Frederick Ashton. I was your grandmother's accountant for 30 years. How can I help you, Mr. Ashton? Actually, I called to help you. His voice wavered. Your grandmother asked me to contact you if anything unusual happened after her death. I've been watching the estate proceedings. And? Your grandmother moved substantial funds before she passed. Trusts, stock accounts, bonds. All placed under your name 6 months before her death. She knew your father would try something. My heart raced. How much? Approximately $4.2 million. Hidden from the estate inventory. Legal, but deliberately obscured. She said you'd need resources to fight. I sat down hard. Why are you telling me this now? Because your father just tried to claim those accounts. He doesn't know they're yours. But the banks contacted me for authorization. He paused. Your grandmother always knew his nature. She was protecting you from the beginning. Tears burned my eyes. Thank you, Mr. Ashton. One more thing. She left instructions. A letter. I'll email you the location. The next day, I confronted Pemberton at his office. You knew, I said, closing the door behind me. You knew my father was lying. His hands trembled slightly. I don't know what you mean. I pulled out my phone, showed him the recording I'd made at the last meeting. You hesitated when reading the first DNA results. You phrased things carefully. You've been protecting him. His shoulders sagged. Your father paid me $50,000 to facilitate certain aspects of the estate transfer. Including faking DNA results? The lab was legitimate. But yes, I ensured certain protocols weren't followed. Ensured questions weren't asked. He looked up, eyes red. I'm not proud of this. Then help me now. Tell me everything. He nodded slowly. I'll testify. I'll provide documentation. I'm done covering his crimes. Why the change of heart? Because I watched you get disowned in that room, and I saw your grandmother's portrait watching me. Eleanor Lawson was a good woman. She trusted me. His voice cracked. I betrayed that trust for money. I won't make that mistake twice. I recorded everything. Every word. Every confession. The evidence was mounting. I presented everything to Judge Patricia Morrison at the county courthouse. The deed. The journal. The accountant's testimony. Pemberton's confession. The doctored DNA test. The stolen birth records. Your Honor, Henry Lawson has engaged in systemic fraud to steal his mother's estate from its rightful heir. He manipulated genetic testing, forged documents, and conspired with legal counsel to fabricate evidence. Judge Morrison reviewed each document carefully, her expression growing darker with each page. These are serious allegations, Miss Lawson. I have proof of everything. Audio recordings, written confessions, financial records. She looked up. This goes beyond estate law. This is criminal fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. Yes, Your Honor. I'm issuing an immediate freeze on all estate assets pending investigation. Criminal charges will be filed through the district attorney's office. She turned to her clerk. Schedule a hearing for Monday. Notify all parties. My father would be formally charged. The estate was frozen. And the countdown to court day had begun. Monday morning. The courthouse steps were crowded with family, lawyers, and curious onlookers who'd heard about the case. My father arrived in a black Mercedes, flanked by expensive attorneys. When he saw me standing there, our eyes met. He walked over, ignoring his lawyer's protests. You'll regret this, Mira. I leaned closer, voice steady. You made sure I'd never forget, Dad. The way you looked at me when you said I wasn't your daughter. The way you took everything Grandma left for me. The way you lied to everyone who mattered. I'm still your father. No. You're the man who tried to steal my inheritance. There's a difference. His eyes flickered, the first time I'd seen real fear there. The estate is worth millions. You think you can just take it? I'm not taking anything. I'm keeping what was always mine. His lawyers pulled him away, but not before I saw his confidence crack completely. Inside the courtroom, the battle would be decided. But out here, at this moment, I'd already won. The hearing began with Pemberton's testimony. He detailed everything, the payoff, the falsified DNA results, the conspiracy. My father's lawyers attacked viciously, but Pemberton held firm. Then Judge Morrison called the next witness. The court calls Elizabeth Chen. I didn't recognize the name. An elderly woman entered, late 70s, walking with a cane. Gentle face, kind eyes. Please state your occupation. I was Eleanor Lawson's private nurse for the last year of her life. My breath caught. Grandma's nurse. The woman who'd been with her every day. And do you have testimony relevant to this case? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Lawson spoke often about her concerns. She told me her son was pressuring her to change the will, to exclude Mira. She said Mira was her only true heir, and she'd taken steps to protect her. What steps? She showed me the deed. The trust documents. The cottage in the mountains. She said, if Henry tries to steal from Mira, everything she needs is hidden where truth lives. Elizabeth looked at me. She loved you more than anything. My father's empire cracked like glass. Judge Morrison's gavel echoed through the silent courtroom. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and documentation, this court finds that Henry Lawson engaged in deliberate fraud with intent to deprive Mira Lawson of her rightful inheritance. All estate assets, properties, and accounts are hereby reverted to Mira Lawson as the documented heir via the original property deed. My father stood. You can't. Sit down, Mr. Lawson. I'm not finished. The judge's voice was steel. Furthermore, criminal charges for fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and identity theft will proceed through the district attorney's office. Bail is set at $500,000. Officers moved toward my father. "You'll thank me someday," he hissed as they led him past me. I met his eyes without flinching. "I just did." Aunt Nora approached as the courtroom cleared. "I'm sorry, Mira. We should have questioned him from the start." "Yes. You should have." I didn't need their apologies. I needed them to understand that betrayal has consequences. Even for my family. 3 weeks later, I walked through Grandma's mansion for the first time as its legal owner. The furniture was still covered in dust sheets. The grandfather clock had stopped. The gardens needed tending. But sunlight streamed through the tall windows, making dust motes dance in golden beams. Peaceful. Finally peaceful. I stopped in front of Grandma's portrait, the one that had watched my disowning. "We did it," I whispered. Her painted smile seemed warmer somehow. Knowing. The house recognized me. Welcomed me home. I had work to do. Repairs, updates, decisions about the future. But for now, I just stood in her study, breathing in the smell of old roses and dust, and let myself feel the weight of everything lift. The rightful heir had returned. Exploring the attic a week later, I noticed something odd about the wallpaper. A seam that didn't match. A section that bulged slightly. I carefully peeled it back. Behind it, a small wooden door, barely 4 feet high, painted to blend with the wall. The missing key from Grandma's ring fit the lock. Inside was a room I'd never known existed. Journals. Photo albums. Letters. File boxes organized by year. 40 years of documentation. Every conversation with my father about money. Every request he'd made. Every time he'd promised to pay her back and never did. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every lie. She'd documented everything. On the desk, a note in her handwriting, "For Mira, in case he contests the verdict. Truth is the best inheritance." She'd prepared for this exact betrayal. Not just prepared. She'd built an impenetrable case. My grandmother had been a master strategist. Among the documents, one envelope stood out. Sealed with red wax, stamped with her initials. "To Mira, read this when the war is won." I broke the seal carefully. "My dearest Mira. If you're reading this, it means you fought for what was yours. It means you were strong enough to face your father's greed and win. I knew what he'd do. I've known for years. Money changed him, made him cruel. But you were always different. Kind, honest, fierce when it mattered. Family is not defined by blood, but by truth. By love. By the choice to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The estate was never about money for me. It was about legacy. And you are my true legacy. Everything I built for you. Not because you're my granddaughter by blood, but because you're my granddaughter by choice, by love, by the truth of who we both are." That was the hidden detail he never understood. Love isn't found in DNA tests or legal documents. It's found in moments. In trust. In the family we choose. You were always mine, Mira. And I was always yours. All my love, Grandma. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed the letter to my chest. All the pain had meaning. Her love was the hidden detail he'd never understood. 6 months later, the mansion blazed with light. I'd restored it completely, fresh paint, polished floors, gardens blooming with the roses Grandma loved. Tonight was the first annual Eleanor Lawson Memorial Gala. Charity event. Art auction. Music filling the halls. Proceeds going to elderly care and legal aid for inheritance disputes. Reporters mingled with guests. Someone asked about my father. "He's currently awaiting trial," I said simply. "But tonight isn't about him. It's about honoring my grandmother's legacy and helping others facing similar betrayals." They applauded. I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, sharing stories about Grandma. Later, standing alone before her portrait, I raised my glass. We won, Grandma. Not just the case. Everything. I kept your legacy alive. I turned your pain into purpose. The portrait seemed to glow in the candlelight. Behind me, music swelled. Laughter echoed. Life flourished in these halls again. Some inheritances can't be stolen, I whispered. And somewhere, I knew she was smiling. Like, share and subscribe for more videos.